What are your thoughts on how someone who maybe doesn't have access to a TAM or doesn't have access to a partner to help them with this, how can they find out what are the right questions to ask?
The advice I've always given others is to be curious, right? Because the first problem is if the glass is already full, you can't add anything to it. So accept that you don't necessarily know the right answers. And so be curious, go and look for it. But yeah, that was, I don't have a direct answer other than maybe get a partner to help you.
Yeah, I think on a high level, the few places I think of red flags in billing in two categories. One being kind of those gradual increases, a gradual kind of unexpected growth where things might get a little bit out of control. And if you're seeing any of these trends where something is increasing much more than you're expecting, that's probably one indicator to see on a high level. Maybe you should be considering looking at this a little bit more. And also, not necessarily just gradual, also just is your bill reflective of what the advantages of the cloud brings you? As an example, if you have a lot of EC2 or compute engine instances and it's just totally flat, 24/7, the graph every day is exactly the same amount. You have your instances on all the time. That it might be worth considering why that is, because the advantage of the cloud is that it is very flexible. You can scale up and scale down very quickly. And so even though that doesn't seem like actually an issue on the, like just when you immediately look at the bill, like there's definitely room to optimize if you're noticing that's just completely flat. And the other category of like red flags that I see are those sudden unexpected increases where you haven't used a service before and suddenly you see it grow very quickly. You see a very sudden spike, or the common ones I see are related to things that are infinitely scalable and serverless typically. If there's no guardrails with those, then I've had a couple of examples where customers have had sudden spikes in BigQuery, for example, because one example that comes to mind, because it was the most impactful one, was an engineer built something new and it had an endless loop. BigQuery and PubSub and Cloud Functions were speaking to each other. I don't remember, this was a while ago, so I don't remember exactly what the architecture was, but it was continuously speaking to each other and going in an endless loop. And that ended up costing them, I think, around $300,000 in the course of a couple of hours, I think less than a whole day. This was from one engineer who drove up that cost, and it's because they didn't have any appropriate guardrails at the time. They didn't have quotas. They were using something that they didn't quite expect that to happen. Things like that, right? I think those are the other red flags. So whenever you're using something that's infinitely scalable, it's probably good to really read up on the pricing, make sure you understand exactly what it's pricing you on and finding ways to mitigate that. Or in the case of like BigQuery, they have other pricing models as well. So maybe the on-demand pricing model isn't the best one for you. But yeah, those are generally the two categories that I see in terms of things that are alarming to me